Is your child being rebellious? Is your child being expelled from school? Is your child running away or causing harm to themselves or others? Getting in fights with family or friends? Is your child unruly? If so, we're going to give you ideas by the end of this video on how you can help them understand what their risky behaviors are doing to you, to themselves, and to their family. We're located in Northwest Oklahoma. We have been in business 15 years helping girls and families that have maybe experienced trauma or risky behaviors in their adolescent teenage girl. We specialize in working with girls who have been traumatized or who have behaviors that are inappropriate in society of which they reside.
My name is Hope. I am the intake and outreach coordinator. So today we're going to talk about the trauma risk correlation, which is sometimes parents say, what's wrong with my kid? Fix my kid. Why is it's my kid's fault that they're acting like this? But we're going to look into when trauma happens, the pendulum swings on what that child is willing to risk.
So every child enters into an innocent being in their little body, and it's all centered around them. So every child is very self-centered from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so when they realize then the world doesn't evolve around them, it becomes difficult. And if a child has experienced hurt or pain and it's recognized, they react differently. They're calm. If a child reacts without someone hearing about their pain or their hurt they've experienced, they might, and I see this over and over again, their first trauma they experienced, they're pretty resilient as a child or an adolescent. And usually it's before age 12 that their first trauma happens. And we as parents, we look at that and say, it's not traumatic to move from this part of the country to another part of the country, and they had to resettle and have a whole new set of friends. But for children, their world is different. The way they see life is different than us as adults. And so the second trauma is what we want to focus on, because that second trauma might just be the loss of a pet, and we as a parent say it's just the loss of a pet, but it might remind them of their previous loss of a family member before that. So if that second trauma is unrecognized, parents will find children between maybe a year and a half entering into risky behavior. Children want their pain to be heard, and so they want their inner soul to be soothed in such a way that somebody has felt my pain. And so kids enter risky behavior if their pain has not been heard. One of the things that I want you to do as a parent is realize that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be in this world where kids enter risky behavior, because it's really a part of adolescence going into their belief system. I'm going to believe something different than my parents have believed. It's just a way of testing their self-efficacy or their ability to make their own choices, maybe between 12 and 14 years old. And so what we look at is how to get a child into the mode of not putting themselves at risk, because them putting themselves at risk hurts you as a parent or a guardian. And so what they're willing to risk is based on their level of pain, their level of trauma. And so maybe they just had a little bit of trauma, and so the pendulum just might swing to 20% risk. If their trauma was 75%, they're going to risk 75% of their life security and their life safety. So the level of pendulum swinging is based on their level of trauma. And so I think it's difficult and it's really interesting to look at trauma and risk correlation. So one of the things we do at White Horse Ranch is help a young woman and help their family members differentiate between what's traumatic for the young woman based on what has been traumatic for the parent, or the parent's poor choices have affected this young woman in her life. And so she might be rebelling against maybe having a second step parent, or maybe rebelling against a mixed family, or maybe rebelling against something that's occurring in a life of a child. And what I want to really stress is trauma or risky behavior in a child, it goes across every socioeconomic status. So whether wealthy parents, whether we have affluent parents, or if we have parents that don't have a level of socioeconomic status, it doesn't matter. What matters is the connection between the parent-child relationship. And if that's broken, or attachment has been broken, the child will act out. And so our goal at Whitehorse Ranch, Adolescent Girls Residential Facility, is to help the girls understand that they don't have to put themselves at risk in order to be heard.
So there's a thing called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And we look at ACEs, and it's a series of questions, and it's simple questions. Have you ever experienced a parent being incarcerated? Have you ever experienced any type of abuse? And based on the ACEs score, when these girls come into the program, or even when you're working with outpatient, it's important to know your ACEs score. Because as you do your healing work, and as these girls at Whitehorse Ranch do their healing work, the ACE score tends to drop and becomes less severe. So as you're working through your adverse childhood experiences, the pendulum of the risk and trauma correlation, as we're becoming healed and processing those traumas, the amount of risk that we're willing to put forth and say, I'm gonna risk this, whether it's a blade on my wrist, or whether it's starting to smoke pot and vaping, whatever the risk is, when the trauma is healed, the risk won't be as severe.
And I think it's really important to realize the girls will risk what's important to you as a parent or guardian.
Yes.
They want to get your attention, but they're throwing fits and you don't know what they're really saying. And our goal is to help them communicate better, and to help them really communicate what is really bothering me in order for my parent to understand, because then at that point the girl's angry and they're